As a very influential scholar, I am sure that you must have colleagues who have come to you and said, come on, Jesus is the only way to God? Isn't that a little bigoted? Isn't that a little narrow-minded? In our pluralistic society, you're the only one that's right?
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
In our day of religious relativism, I think that the notion that Jesus is the only way to God comes across as deeply offensive to many people, including scholars. And I think here we begin to really get at some of the root with respect to skepticism about Jesus of Nazareth. Because, like it or not, Jesus of Nazareth was not politically correct. And we want a politically correct Jesus. And I personally think that much of modern scholarship is driven by the desire to have a politically correct Jesus, rather than this dogmatic, narrow Jesus who claimed to be the absolute revelation of God the Father to mankind, who claimed to be the only way to God, who claimed to be the sole sacrifice for human sin. And it is this desire to have a politically correct Jesus that has distorted and guided the judgment, I think, of some skeptical New Testament critics. But one has to say that historical facts simply cannot be determined by considerations of political correctness. Otherwise, you're allowing ideology to drive historical studies, and that's just bad methodology. You've got to let Jesus be Jesus. You've got to let him speak for himself and be who he was. Otherwise, you are simply imposing your ideology, your politically correct Jesus, on the Jesus of history, and you will be apt to come up with a Jesus who looks just like you. And that, frankly, has been largely the history of the quest of the historical Jesus. As one researcher said, each scholar looked down the long well of history and saw his own face reflected at the bottom.